All right. Hello, everyone.
Awesome.
Hey, Sean. Good to see you.
Good, I guess good evening, Frank, since you're over in Asia today.
I am for all those. I spent 50 hours flying from Atlanta to Asia. It was not a fun trip, but anyway, here we are. I hope you all are having a great time, and we're looking forward to our discussion today. Sean, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, and I'll go
Yeah,
next.
so my name's Sean Barry. I just joined Kobiton as the CEO in early October. I come from an enterprise software and platform business. I've worked around whether it be telecom or development most of my career, and thrilled to be here, excited to be in the mobile space, and really grateful that y'all are coming to join us for our talk.
Awesome. And I'm Frank Moyer. I'm the CTO of Kobiton. I've been here since the early days. And Sean, it feels like, even though you've only been here 4 weeks, it feels like you've been here for about 4 years. So, just to kick things off, what do you, first off, we're grateful to have you running Kobiton. And so why don't you just give us your first impressions and then we can dive into the meat of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think first off, the mobile phone it rules the world. You can reach every human being on the planet, even in places where you don't have desktop computing that's accessible. And so I feel like the fact that our core focus is on apps and making apps better is a big market. I think there's a lot of opportunities. And quite frankly, like at my core, I love to help people. I like to see people. I love coaching. I like teaching. I've got 3 daughters, and it's really what energizes me. And so when I look at what our end users, our practitioners are dealing with in the mobile space with complexity of devices, complexity of operating systems, compressed deliverable times, our practitioners you guys are in a tough spot because everyone's counting on you. You're last in the line, and I don't think there's anyone in automation or manual testing who's ever said, "Oh, I don't need any more time to do this." And so
They're always
I
at the
love
end
that.
of testers
Yeah,
are always shoved at the end of the pipeline, right?
yeah. And so I think I love the fact that in this industry, in our product platform, and what us and our competitors are trying to do is really to help you all achieve a better life, get a better outcome, and do it with less time and less headache. So I feel like it's a pretty noble pursuit, and it aligns with what I like to do. And so that's what makes me excited to be on this team with Frank and others across the globe.
Great, great. Um, now, let's talk a little bit about just the developers and testers and um, having them. One of the things we promised as part of this session was, and something we'd like to focus on in this session is how developers and testers can work together and to create the best user experiences. And Bitrise plays a key role because of the speed at which iterations can be done on mobile. But I think there's that collaboration between the developers and the testers. There are different ways to skin that cat. One is to help the iterations go faster, and the other is to actually reduce the number of iterations that are needed.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think, Frank, I'd love to get your perspective for our audience here and for myself. So, in traditional engineering and traditional development, there's a lot of mature tools. There's a lot of opportunities. You can do tests on, you can simulate tests, but in the mobile world, there's so many permutations of where the operating system, the device, and even the network. And because consumer expectations have gone through the roof, and you see massive investment domestically in the US on 5G network, they expect rapid speed. Like the mobile device should be working better, faster, stronger than even the desktop computer. And so when you take a step back and look at the pressure it puts on the testing community specific to mobile app, like if you're a tester, how should you be thinking about keeping up with things right now and the pressure that's on your shoulders?
Yeah, that how do you create that best user experience, and what does that mean? It's like you've got to we've talked to a lot of our customers about what's expected of them from the product team or the executive team on what is a great experience. You definitely see a lot of what's not a great experience. All you have to do is go out to the App Store and see your ratings and see what people are complaining about. But and what they complain about, why they uninstall apps, is because it's performant. It's not, it lacks the performance that it needs to. It's not intuitive user experience, what we see very commonly is the app doesn't work on certain mobile devices very well. So it crashes, or it's very slow on certain devices. And as you pointed out, Sean, it's certain network speeds just make it unusable. We run into this quite a lot, and that's a lot to ask from a tester, right? To test user experience, performance, functionality, all of these things that are not easy to measure sometimes, like how good is the user experience? Do I have to sit there with a stopwatch to time it? And how can we provide and enable the testers in mobile to do their job more efficiently without, going back to executive management and say, okay, we need to add an army of manual testers.
Add an army or add, heaven forbid, more time to the SDLC process. So maybe, Frank, you've been in development your entire career. You're a hands-on keyboard kind of guy. Talk to me about the differences. You've got, some of our clients are doing both desktop, browser, as well as mobile. So it's, not all applications are the same on all devices. We don't, in the browser world, you test accordingly. I don't need to test on a Dell computer and an HP and a Compaq. It doesn't, it doesn't vary too dramatically on the hardware. What makes mobile so different, and why we need to pay more special attention to what's happening in the mobile world?
Yeah. And I think a lot of it comes down to, and what's advantageous for the device manufacturers is the greatest pain point for the testers. And that is, within the browser world, for those of you who use early versions of IE, Internet Explorer, Microsoft did not adhere to the W3C standard. And that was painful for users and testers. But pretty much the industry's come around to following the standard for that specification. And what that means is when I write code for Safari, it'll work on Firefox, and it will work on Chrome, and it'll work on Edge. So all of that is interoperable. The tests are portable to those different browsers, versions, and operating systems. In the mobile world, it's the Wild West because there is no W3C specification. It's each manufacturer can decide how they want the XML, the HTML rendered, and that makes it really difficult for testers, right? If you're writing code to iOS, you have to write different selectors for Android, or even within different versions of iOS or different versions in what they call skins of Android, render things differently. So the most common issue in talking to testers on mobile that automation engineers find is element not found. When they go and try to find an element on the screen, it's not found. And so we built a product called FlexCorrect that uses artificial intelligence to self-heal that, so that the test doesn't fail. It just goes through and continues on and lets the tester know, hey, this was fixed by us, so you don't have that failure.
Yeah, you pointed out a really interesting dynamic. If you think about Apple, Apple makes the device, and they also make the operating system. So it would be the equivalent of Microsoft making the computers and also, making Windows. You have this dominant control over how, who comes into your ecosystem. So I'm an Apple user on the phone side, so I don't want them to cut me off if I say something wrong. But as a as a tester and someone who's the last step for quality, you've got consumer expectations are incredibly high. Device permutations are abundant. And so now I've got to figure out how to make sure that it works for the entire audience, because if your app is buggy or if it's flawed, it's kind of like Yelp now. If you have a bad restaurant or you deliver a bad experience at your retail store, the review culture comes up incredibly fast, and consumers can be brutal if they're not happy. And so the thing that I know we address, and there's different ways to do it, is testing on real devices. So why is it so important? Why can't I just use stub code or simulators or emulators to just give me what I think could happen as it relates to basic testing? Like, why do I need to really install my app on a real phone and a real OS and see what happens? Like, why is that so important?
Yeah, it's because you cannot create what really happens on the device unless you use a real device. And we typically have customers who come over from using emulators to Kobiton because they've been burned, right? Because the UI rendered fine on the emulator and it didn't render fine on the real device. Performance is, it's impossible to test the performance of your app unless you're using a real device. So we've, we definitely think emulators play a part in the ecosystem, but you should not be, we're strong believers that you shouldn't be releasing to production without using real devices. One of our customers is a mobile first application development company that has 3,000 devices, right? So it's one of the top 10 mobile companies, and they have 3,000 mobile devices because that's what they need to test. They're looking at anything that's over a 0.05% usage because that's revenue to them.
Yeah.
And that's a discipline they need to have to sustain their business.
It's an interesting point you make around revenue. The ability for the testing step or the quality assurance step before you go commit and deploy, there's a direct correlation to people either avoiding an app or uninstalling the app or not using it, especially with COVID. It just accelerated the dependency on mobile devices. And so there's a lot of money that can be lost by a company if they release something that doesn't fit most of their or a large portion of their customer base. And then there's risk, and there's also opportunity, because if you find and deliver the best app, you can win clients. Think about travel, like 20 different travel apps. I'll probably be patient for maybe one or two bugs. So with that said, I think a lot of times the testing team making the business case, heck, maybe making the business case to go to trade shows and get investment in learning and get the right tooling, it's kind of the least fed, call it, department in the process.
Right.
The cloud guys get what they need, the developers get what they need, and QA just has to figure it out. So
push through, right?
Yeah, to push through. And so talk to me a bit about the things that, from the mindset of a either an automation engineer, manual tester, or QA leader, what should they be excited about that's coming out soon? I'm not talking about beyond. Technologies that are simplifying the life and allowing the practitioners to do their job better, do it faster, and then point to the revenue that they're either saving or enabling by making it awesome.
Yeah, and I led a testing team once, and we were always being pushed into, we have 1 week to test. Oh, now you got 4 days. Now you got 3 days.
Can you name it in 2?
Yeah. Exactly. And you're making trade-offs without good information. And what's exciting for me is the industry and all the capabilities, like Appium, for those who do automation using in mobile, use Appium, it's challenging to learn. And probably the biggest obstacle in learning Appium is setting up the environment and writing your first script. And
Yep.
what we're excited about is, with Kobiton as you can run your manual test and export it, and then point it to one of our, an Appium server on Kobiton, or point it to another one of our competitor servers. So you can export a fully operating Appium script that's portable to any, Sauce Labs, Browser Stack, any of those guys, and it runs. So what a great way to get started, just getting into automation without this burden of, oh my gosh, I have to learn all of Appium. So that, I think that's exciting for the industry. And then the other, some other things, just, parts of testing that are hard that testers are asked for is, how good is the user experience of the app? And we've done a lot to help. We've trained an AI model that takes the top 50 apps in the App Store, and we classify it in a way that we know we can compare any other app to those 50 to say, how does it look? How does the user experience feel compared to these top 50 apps? So that's that's fun, right? That makes the tester's job a lot more fun. And I think from an automation and engineering perspective, the less times I get the element not found and I show up the next morning after my automation run is completed and I see a bunch of errors, and not having that, instead showing up the next morning and saying, here are all the tests finished, and I have to make these adjustments to my tests. That's just a much more pleasant experience.
Yeah, you said a really interesting thing about the time frame that people are using, whether it's Appium, which is setting up the device and getting started, like to actually the tool prep to go through the process. I know that you can't test for maybe every single permutation out there, and candidly, whether it's domestic or globally outside the U.S., I think the economy is extending the life of these devices, because I'm not excited to go sign up for a new phone if I've already bought it, and if my phone can't handle the latest version of whatever the operating system is. So we're having an exponential increase of what the permutations are. But talk to me about like real device setup, because what should I be like? When does it make sense for me to go buy a couple phones and plug them into my desk and hope to heck no one steals them? And then now all of a sudden I'm in the inventory management business and I got to worry about that. Like where have you seen testers start to say, gosh, I either do it for me or let me control it in a more thoughtful, efficient way? Because I don't want to waste time on setup. I want to focus on excellence.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I like to refer to it as BC, before COVID, and AC after COVID, because BC, before COVID started, there were teams of people that were happy with 50 devices, right? They're like, okay, we do that ourselves. And some would have like shoe holders that would hold the devices. As soon as COVID hit, they're like, get rid of these devices. Like that tiering, as soon as you started getting above 10 devices, it was typically something they didn't want to touch. So we make it easy for anyone to create their own mobile lab. Like our software, you can deploy it behind your firewall. So if you wanted to, it's hard to do with like Apple certificates and managing those and installing those on the devices and signing the apps. These are really hard problems that we've solved that make it that reduce the friction for getting a device lab set up.
That's awesome to hear. So we got some questions to pile up and we want to be able to hit those. So give me kind of 2 more seconds. So maybe maybe help me as from the vantage point of a tester, whether it's manual or automated or kind of somewhere in between. How should I be thinking about working with my the development side of things differently than what traditional engineering is? Like, how do I get alongside the shoulders? One, to have them like feel my pain, and two, not get surprised, and three, potentially make the case for the complexity that I have to do, because I've got to, this isn't just a test. Like, this is, it's
Yeah.
way more than that when it relates to the mobile app. It's the product. So
Yeah.
how should I be thinking about partnering with engineering in a different kind of way?
Yeah, and I think I've probably spoken to 500 customers and over the years, and there are two of them who actually do it the true agile way, which is the testers are sitting alongside the developers and writing tests during the sprint, and they check in the automation code at the same time. It's an unreasonable expectation for testers to do that. I think what's more reasonable expectation, and what we see as the low-hanging fruit for testing, is about 50% of the issues that testers find are changes that the developer makes on one device type that inadvertently changes the user interface on another device type. 50%.
Wow.
So, and what that means is there's back and forth, right? The tester then says, oh, here's a bug on the Galaxy A10, and then they fix that and something else breaks. So enabling the developer pre-commit to check performance, crashes, inadvertent UI changes is going to significantly improve the quality of the app when it gets to test.
Yeah, it's a great point. One of our questions was, our developers, the developers are not testers themselves, and that thinking of trying to push before you get to the commit, some of the common mistakes are going to gum up the engine or make the test fail, or potentially make the compressed timeframes not where they need to be. And so I think some of the best practices we're seeing is way more collaboration of, it's not a linear process. It's a much more iterative process between the two communities. Here's a question we've got, and we'll pivot over here because we only got about 4 minutes. We want to be respectful of people's time. But question for me is, how should I be justifying investment as a tester to get either more resources or more time or more tooling to be successful?
Yeah, I think it's an easy business case to management to show that leveraging new tools and using artificial intelligence and machine learning will get a return of investment in months, not years. And it's coupling the tester with machine learning. A lot of testers are worried, is machine learning to take over my job? It's not. It's this fusion between the tester and the machine learning algorithms that make the overall product better. So I think that's a key improvement that they can look forward to.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, because I think oftentimes, ML or AI on the enterprise side of software has been seen as a luxury. Do you really need it to work? And really, AI and ML now is almost a table stakes, because you have to cover off on so many permutations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When n is 100 instead of n equals 3, you've really got to use technology to do the job. Here's a great question. So where's the border between time and quality? Is it automation? Is automation really the thing that's going to enable both to happen?
Yeah, and I often see this oscillation between time and quality, right? It's like, get it out faster, and then I need higher quality because they get it out faster, and all of a sudden there's an issue. So I'm going to rephrase that question and say, how can we accelerate? How do we shorten the cycles to accelerate that time and quality together? Right, we're getting by using some of the tooling like AI, we can accelerate the time it takes to get to automation, and we can expand the breadth that you were just talking about, Sean, of all the end permutations in a fraction of the time. Then it becomes less human resource dependent and more physical asset, phone resource dependent. Can I get access to the device? How long is my testing window? How do I make that faster?
Yeah, and it's interesting. And while I'm new to Kobiton, I'm not new to the software world. And what I have realized, and an automation engineer who was doing manual, who helped us advance to more automated, to hit more scale. She she politely told me, as the CEO of the company, you think of QA as a cost. She's like, we're not a cost center. We are a revenue enablement center.
Right.
And so when you change that mentality as a CEO or department head or someone who's very focused on budget, and then on the testing side, you're able to specifically show either crashes avoided, how your app performs vis-a-vis some of the other apps that are out there. And that's kind of one of the beautiful things about the app world. You can very much find out what's going on with your competitor easily. Download it, run it, experience, and see what works. And so I think if the goal of QA and testing is not just to find bugs, but it's to deliver excellence from the user experience and to benefit the stakeholders, it really puts this whole ecosystem of testing automation in a much more powerful position to have a seat at the table that they can distinctly point their value. That's what I'm really excited about mobile, because mobile is so complicated. It's the gateway to the consumer. It's the path to their checkbook and their Apple Pay and whatnot and Google Pay. So holy cow, like it really does give our engineering teams on the testing side a chance to break out of what the traditional mold has been of being a cost center. So that's less of a question and more of a philosophy here. So sorry to get preachy, but there's one last question here. We do want to wrap up maybe. And oh, by the way, for anyone who have to go, you can find Frank and I in the community chat, and you can send us direct emails. Our whole approach is, it's a big enough world out there. We want to make sure that if we can help you all do your jobs more successfully, regardless of whether Kobiton's helping you do that, that's what we're here for. So please use us if you're looking for benchmarking or how to have that value conversation with your department head. But here's a good question. How would you even set an AI model to detect fail states? Like how would one go about doing that?
Yeah, so I'm going to geek out a little bit. Just really
I was expecting it to come, so I'm surprised it's so long.
Testing, when you look at testing, the tester's job is to find errors in the application. And when a tester, as a human being, misses something, right? There's a bug and they missed it. That's a regression. That is a false. We call it a false negative, right? It's like I missed that, and that's really bad. You don't want errors going into production. Sometimes, with AI models, they also have false positives. They sort of say, hey, this is a problem, and it's not really a problem. It's annoying, but it's not as big a deal as missing something. So, what we do is we train. There are different parts, right? There's performance, there's text, functional, there's UI. All of these are, so the question is around detect failed states. And we train our machine learning models to get, we optimize for reduce or minimizing the false negatives. So we're shooting at a below 0.5%, and then keeping the false positives, the annoying things, below 5%. So, and every time you annotate, we say, hey, this is a problem. Yeah, it's not a problem. You annotate that, and the model gets smarter. And that's a key thing, is does it have a feedback mechanism to get smarter the next time? So that not just for that specific case, but other cases in your app or other cases in other apps, it's overall smarter.
Yeah. Well, Frank, I'm gonna wrap it up here. We went a couple minutes over, but I really appreciate the folks attending the call. One, what I'd say, kind of parting thoughts as it relates to testing and whether manual or automated teams. In the world of accessibility, where you've got to be compliant with visual site standards on the app, that is not for the faint of heart, and that's very, very hard to do manually. It's very hard to do effectively. And so what we've seen is some of our engineering teams and our testing teams look for, you call it resource and investment and tooling to solve the risk problem of accessibility. Because if you're not compliant with accessibility, you're introducing a huge amount of legal risk for your company, depending on the size of your business and how aggressive people might be to go after you. And also, it's the right thing to do to be compliant. And so now all of a sudden there's a bigger problem set to solve, which may help performance testing, may help visual testing, may help traditional functional testing, and then you can bring in something that makes you legally compliant as it relates to accessibility and compliance of those standards. So just some good ideas for the community out there to make sure that you all get what you need, the time you need to deliver excellence. So again, don't hesitate. We're in the community chat. If you've got questions, we are happy to help, whether it's me, Frank, or any of our engineers. And just a big thanks to Bitrise for making this learning platform accessible for us as a company and for you all as attendees. So big shout out, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.